Welcome to Talking Data Equity for Friday, June 12th. We are very, very happy to have you with us. And if this is your first time, welcome. I'm really glad that you have found your way to us. My name is Heather Kraus. I'm the founder of an organization called We All Count, and we do data analysis and build tools that help you align your values and your community priorities with your quantitative and data projects. And as I was just telling our special guest, we do Talking Data Equity most Fridays, basically as an end of week gift to myself. We do Talking Data Equity because I love Talking Data Equity. And what it is an informal, almost weekly drop in session that anybody from any sector, any part of the world who cares about equity and data can join us. And we've been going for a little over 4 years now. And you can find our agenda and our upcoming topics at our homepage, which I just put in the chat. And don't tell any of the trolls on the internet, but our Zoom link stays the same. Our Zoom link has been the same every week for over 4 years now. And so far, we've had no trolls, no horrible drop ins. And so we're trying hard to keep it that way. So now that you've found us, you can definitely find us again, but don't tell the trolls. Today we're going to have a special guest who does amazing work, who I respect and admire very, very much. And what our run of show kind of looks like today is that our special guest is, hopefully, fingers crossed, at the technical aspects of this work, going to share a short video with you and then share some really, really cool stories. And she's in the middle of the woods, so we're gonna deal with the technical issues as they come up. So just bear with us. But while Vidya is sharing her stories, we're going to ask that you ask questions and share reflections and have conversations using the Zoom chat. And you can either ask questions that everybody here can see, or if you want to ask a question privately, you can just direct message to me. And I'm going to amplify the questions in the chat as we go along. And if we have time at the end, we will also have a live mic Q&A. We'll see how that goes. Okay. So thank you for joining us. And let me introduce you to a person I have admired for a very, very long time now, going back to my baby days as a mathematical statistician. Let me introduce you to Vidhya Sriram, who is the Senior Director of CARE's Global Village Savings and Loan Association. You may have heard of that as the VSLAs. And she leads CARE's efforts to elevate the role of women in savings group across our programs in 67 countries. With over 18 years of experience at CARE, she has worked with more than 35 CARE offices to design integrated programs that respond to the needs of women, girls, and other marginalized communities. Vidya leads CARE's strategy to reach 62 million people through savings groups by 2030, and she has spearheaded efforts that reach 20 million people since 2020. Originally from India, Vidya holds a master's degree in public policy from the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas. And on top of this nice professional bio, I can tell you that Vidya is an all-around super dope person who combines a lot of the fantastic human traits that we all care about. So Vidya, thank you for finding some Wi-Fi in the forest and joining us.
Yeah, what an amazing intro. Thank you for that, Heather. And the feeling is mutual. I've known Heather for years and years, and she's one of my favorite people. So thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me to share some insights from our work. I hope that you guys enjoy what I'm going to talk about today. So Heather invited me to talk about an initiative that CARE has spearheaded called Women Respond. And most of you may not know what a VSLA is, so why don't I just take 30 seconds to tell you? So VSLA, Village Savings and Loan Associations, is something that CARE didn't invent. Women in communities in Africa have been saving together and lending to each other for millennia. We came upon it in Niger in 1991 and codified the approach. Basically, it is a way for women who have no access to financial resources in very remote areas of the world to pool their resources and support each other to invest in income generating activities. It's a simple model, it's a replicable model, and for every VSLA that we ourselves form, one forms organically. And, even though CARE has reached 30 million members now through VSLAs, every organization forms VSLAs because they are the most powerful tool to help women get financially included. So that's VSLAs. What I'm here to talk to you about today is we started an initiative during COVID, which is when Heather and I started working together very closely, where we've been working with VSLAs for 35 years, and during COVID, it was the first time we lost touch with them. Freaked us out. Like, oh no, we don't know how they're coping. We don't know, are they saving still? And so we started this initiative called Women Respond in Crisis, where we reached out to them digitally. So if they were working with a community agent, a field facilitator, we reached out to that person to find out, are you still saving? What is your immediate need? How are you yourself responding? Which is one question I will keep coming back to, is the thing that really knocks me out of my seat every time. So we started this in COVID. We found some incredible insights from what our members were asking of us, and how that really differed from the traditional response that development organizations develop, often in a vacuum, often at headquarters, without voices from the field really represented. So we continued this effort beyond COVID, and for the past 5 years, we've been regularly polling women and men in VSLAs. I don't want to forget the men, but 85% of our members are women. And because they are very rarely asked, what do you need? We wanted to continue this exercise. And so for the past 5 years, we've been reaching about 4,000 members a year. And overall, we've reached almost 36,000 people in dozens of countries. Sorry for my guest star. Go away, guest star. She's looking for food. And we really, really have some great insights, but I want to focus most of our time today on what we've learned from our 2025 survey. But before I do that, I'm hoping to share a quick video on what Women Respond is and how it really amplifies the voices of women. So let me pray and hope that this works. Okay. Heather, you will tell
Yeah,
me if
yeah.
this is coming on.
We're going with technological feat number one. Let's see.
Yes.
It is on. The sound is not amazing, but let's go with it because there's words.
Matsalar ruwa, wallahi matsalar ruwa da shi zai kawo mana je ka cikin gari. Kuma kun san ruwa ma rayuwa ce, a rayuwa ta farko da in babu ruwa gaskiya rayuwa ma akwai matsala.
Ikiza twahuye naco n'ubu tugipambana naco cuguma duturatuzwa n'uruzi rusizi nk'ahandi natse indaro kubw'ayo mazi ubuzima bwarahagaze na n'ico kiza ndiko ndahangana naco kuko ndagerageza uko nshoboye kose abana bagafungura nubwo dufungura nabi nabi ariko tugafungura ashobora gufungura kabiri cyangwa rimwe.
Les problèmes qui survivent notre village à Popono, c'est l'augmentation des prix de la nourriture. Dès que le riz, on n'en peut plus acheter. Avant, on l'achetait à 400, à 350. C'est parti jusqu'à 700 francs le kilo. Nous, c'est parti jusqu'à 750 ou à 800 le kilo. On est obligé de faire les 1000 francs avec.
Perfect.
Great. I'm so glad that worked. Okay, so Heather, if you would
2025, you'll
no,
need a
no, no, go
refund
ahead.
It's gonna
in
keep
the
playing.
US. But did you know that a valid
Patience with my technical challenges. All right, so Heather, if you would share the slides, awesome.
Yep.
All right, so I kind of gave you a bit of an intro to Women Responds, but it's really based on a really simple idea. Women are always the first responders in a crisis in a community. And we see that in everything from Ebola response, where we're talking about, who's really taking care of the sick at home, as health workers. We see this in refugee response. Who's making meals for people who are crossing borders daily, right? DRC to Uganda is a very porous border, and there are women there who are feeding on both sides. We see this in fighting child marriage in Ethiopia, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But whatever the crisis, women in communities are hit first, they're hit the hardest, and they're often the last to be served. And they're also facing huge crises. So I said at the outset, we started this during COVID, but since COVID, the crisis that women are facing have been compounding. So it's COVID, on top of that, conflict, on top of that, climate, on top of that, drought, inflation. They're just facing multiple varied crises, and those crises are getting more extreme, and they're compounding. And women are still the leaders. They're incredibly powerful, and yet very rarely supported to meet their needs. So Women Respond is basically based on the idea that if you ask women in communities what's happening right now in real time, what do you need in terms of support? What's the crisis that you're facing? And how are you yourself responding so that we can support you? You get better, faster data and more impactful answers and better program design, so that at the end of the day, we're really supporting what they are asking of us. And I want to give you an example of the respond part, which is really critical because it's not just about us passively getting this data and designing programs, which is great, but we also share the data back with women in these communities so that they themselves can see what they are saying across VSLA groups. So women and girls in Ethiopia that we polled recently used the data to go advocate for themselves with their local government, to prevent child marriage and to get girls back in school. Because that during a crisis, that is actually the biggest impact, is that there's a huge uptake in child marriage. And they transformed the data that we gave them into an advocacy tool that didn't just mobilize money from CARE, it mobilized money from their own local government, which is the fastest responder, the closest. They can get to a woman much faster than we can. Women in Niger, we gave the data back to them and they said, oh, we need to completely change the way we share health information. And they created their own radio show to make sure that people in their communities, particularly people who spoke minority languages who weren't being reached, had access to health information, and that they were being the first responders, but also taking it upon themselves to serve the needs of communities that we weren't reaching. And that's the kind of thing you can unlock when you take women seriously as leaders and when you actually ask them what they want. Next slide. Oh, one slide up, please. Yeah, that one. Thank you. All right. So this doesn't happen often enough. And I've worked in development for 18 years, and sometimes I'm really disappointed by how lazy we are. We don't do the hard work of asking people in the most remote regions what they want. So since 2020, we've taken it upon ourselves to talk to 36,000 women. And when we started this, some women said, 75% of them said, no one's ever talked to me. 75% of men have said, yeah, they talk to me all the time. And this is why we keep doing this. This is why we keep investing in this. So I want to talk today a little bit about what women are telling us about their lives, their expectations, how they're responding to different shocks and crisis. And this is a listening initiative, right? This isn't about us telling them what to do. It's about them telling us what they need and how that informs programming decisions. So let me say, we started this in 2020. We've heard from 36,000 people across 28 countries and 85% of them women, which is a point that I will keep coming back to because they're the ones that are never listened to. Next slide, please, Heather. All right. So today I want to focus on the findings from the last year. So we've been doing this for 5 years, but 2025, we took a step back. We kind of aggregated the data across all 5 years. And in 2025, we listened to about 3,500 members of VSLAs in 7 countries: Burundi, Colombia, Ethiopia, Mali, Niger, Syria, and Vietnam. And while 85% of the respondents are women, 5% are under the age of 18, which is important data for us to capture because most of the time we don't talk to adolescent girls or girls at all. And they are also very deeply impacted by crisis. And what we do is we do 2 rounds of quantitative surveys in each country. And then we follow that with 2 rounds of qualitative surveys. So we ask them digitally 3 questions. What is the crisis you're facing? What's your most immediate need? And how are you yourself responding? And then we take that data and we go and sit with the communities and the women in VSLAs and say, hey, this is what you told us on the survey. We want to give that back to you and tell us, is that true? And often it's not. Like you're answering a question on a phone and you have limited choices in how you answer it. When we dig in qualitatively, we find nuance country to country. We can ask questions, and that's where we get a lot of the insight. That's where, they're reflecting on their own group experience and their community's experience and their personal experience. And it's really, really insightful. Next slide. Okay, so we could all argue community engagement is critical for any effective response. It is often not what we do. In humanitarian and development settings, we're not centering our response on those who are closest to the problem. And that's a recipe for disaster. So the most effective way to understand and support effective communities is by listening to them and engaging with them and the people that are the most affected. And you saw that in the opening video. Women are often the first responders. However, they face a lot of barriers that limit their access to resources, to opportunities, and their voices are missing in decision making at home and in the spheres where we work. So we're really focused on targeting women because the data we have on other communities, including men and boys, is limited in real time. So that's the value of Women Respond, is it's telling us not what we designed 2 years ago, when everything was different. There was a different crisis. We're learning this in real time so that we can respond in real time and connect our VSLA members to local response. So overall, we've polled in 28 countries and we get data across those countries. But every year we ask specific questions in 6 to 7 countries, and it gives us a really broad picture and a specific picture of what we can do. And what women are doing themselves, beyond the financial aspect of a VSLA. Women in VSLAs are leading social and community change. And you'll see this a little later on. I'll give you some examples of how that's happening. But it does give us insight about individual experience, and it helps us learn about how women are supporting community response and their leadership in the community and group leadership, but also the challenges they have, particularly in a time of reduced aid, humanitarian and development aid. And they are really acutely aware of what is happening and how they themselves need to meet the moment, but how we need to help them meet that moment. They're our most powerful community agents, so we really need to know what's up with them. Next slide. So in the next couple minutes, I want to share three key findings. I'll talk about how the crises are affecting women, how it's impacting women themselves, and what the major crises they're facing. But could I maybe take a second and ask you guys in the chat? I just kind of want to poll you and see, what do you guys think is the most urgent crises and impact on women's lives? Let's just take like 30 seconds, put it into the chat, and tell me what you think if you are up to it. Men are always the most urgent problem. I love that. Gender-based violence, health, yes. Hmm. Love Rebecca's answer. Yeah, no. Okay, you guys are on it. All right, I will reveal the answers from our survey. Okay, we're going. I won't stop you. Yep. All right. Let's go to the next slide and see what the survey says. So, like I said before, the communities we've polled are not just facing a crisis. They're facing multiple compounded crises. And as you heard before, the top five that we've seen in 2025 are food security, food insecurity, drought, pests. Like this is a new one. Not a new one, but this is one that keeps increasing, pests destroying crops, lack of clean water, and flooding. And a lot of this, like if you're just looking at this data right off the top, you'll say, oh, this is all climate related. But this is where the nuance comes in when we sit down with communities and ask women, okay, we heard you. This is what you said. What does that mean for you in Burundi? What does that mean for you in Syria? Food insecurity and weather extremes are the main challenges across communities. But weather extreme, climate, has a direct implication on food access, particularly in farming communities. And for food insecurity, it's common across countries, but 7 in 10 women identify it as the major issue. And that has been true since we started this survey. Sometimes we see a country label it differently, like in Ethiopia, Burundi, Mali, and Niger. This is consistently the highest impact for women and across countries. But what women consistently tell us, it's not just one shock, it's multiple. And they are happening recurring, one after another, or at the same time. So it's a compounding, interconnected effect on their lives, and it's unrelenting. And so the two quotes that you see here on your screen are from a woman in Vietnam and a woman in Ethiopia, much different contexts, but they're experiencing similar things, right? So for Pong in Vietnam, worsening soil conditions means lower production for her, and that means lower income. And for Kima, repeated droughts, rising inflation, disease outbreak means her regular day-to-day has been continuously disrupted and her economic activity diminished. Next slide, please, Heather. And yeah, for some of these crises are not new crises per se. They're more frequent and they're more severe, and more women are reporting food insecurity, droughts, and crop damages than the previous year. So even when we compare this data to our 2024 data in the same locations, we see that food insecurity has risen, over 10%. Right? That's a lot in one year in a place like Ethiopia. Drought, similarly, 10%. Women are reporting that pests are destroying their crops. And so production is really diminished. And then, of course, there's country-specific trends. So, like in Mali and Syria, women are saying, conflict and safety concerns are their biggest concerns, while women in Vietnam are reporting more flood-related challenges. And so, while the challenges vary country to country, even by age group, depending on who we're talking to, like if we're talking to an adolescent girl, majority of the time she's saying, "Look, I need menstrual hygiene kits so that I can stay in school," or I'm under threat of child marriage because my household doesn't have the income that it did last year. So the pressure on households is increasing because of all of these compounding crises. Next slide, please. All right. So they're overlapping crises. They have a significant impact on women. And I don't want to belabor that point. You get it now. But if we summarize the top two, it'd be women saying, my ability to have an income is significantly diminished. My ability to feed myself, my household is on the decline. So the two major ones we see is livelihoods, which is earning an income, earning money consistently, and food and nutrition. And these are the same two we've seen over the last 5 years. And, we see sometimes food and nutrition are kind of combined in one. And this is where it's really important for us to dig in at the country level. Beyond livelihoods and incomes, women also report impacts on basic services, health, education, water access. Some of you had noted that in the chat, and that's absolutely the thing that women are really experiencing, because these are the things that communities don't have access to. Sanitation and safety is a concern because women are always the ones going to fetch water in remote areas. And the majority of the time, even in the qualitative, women say children's education and family health are their biggest priorities. So one interesting trend, though, that we see is, we didn't put it on the slide, but from 2020 to 2023, more women are prioritizing mental health. And it's one of those things, like, we can't ask directly because, like, if you say, is there violence in the home, it opens up a whole thing that we aren't necessarily prepared to respond to. We will address those things gently in the qualitative. But we ask them, like, what are your priority impacts? What's your most urgent need? And they tend to focus on livelihoods and on basic services. But when we look at the qualitative, they express they're worried, they're stressed, their mental health is at risk. They have to work for less money. They're worried about their kids. And that's the kind of thing that, psychosocial support is so critical, but often the thing that is not provided immediately, particularly because it affects women the most. But overall, even at impact level, we see food insecurity and household level impacts are on the rise. And in 2024, we saw 64% of people reporting food insecurity, and now that's 76%. Right? That's a huge jump in just 1 year, and very, very troubling to us. Next slide, please, Heather. And I'm keeping an eye on time. I'll go faster. I think we're running out of time. Okay. So these impacts are visible in health services as well. In the chat, somebody had noted that. And this is one of the questions we asked separately in addition to the main three questions. And nearly half of women report that when a crisis gets worse, they have limited access to medicine, to drugs. Either they're not accessible at all or they're not affordable. And 42% report there's a declining quality of healthcare in communities because healthcare workers are often women. They're the ones that are doing the primary care and not visibly. And they often say that health centers are either short-staffed or understaffed, especially now in places like DRC, where Ebola response is, there's no CDC. Healthcare workers are also experiencing the crisis themselves. And it gives us an indication of how much the health service gets strained when there is a crisis. And women are the frontline caregivers at home. They're the decision makers around health and hygiene. They're taking care of sick family members, but they're also the majority of health workers, nurses, volunteers. They're a trusted source of information. So they're also the ones doing the response in the community. So this makes them both highly at risk, but also essential in outbreak response. Okay, I will keep going. Next slide, please. All right, so I want to share a couple stories. So this one is of Kima from Ethiopia, and it was a real person we polled. She's 20 years old. She's a VSLA member. She's a mother of one, and she talked about how recurring and multiple crises have affected her and her family's life. Her family, who works in smallholder farming, because of drought, because of rising inflation, because of disease outbreak, they've had to sell some of their assets. And we see this as a coping mechanism everywhere, right? When a crisis hits, the first thing they do is sell an asset, sell your goat, sell your bike. But that's also the thing that helps you generate an income. And although it's not written here explicitly in this quote, when you read her full story, and I invite all of you to actually go to the Women Respond site. I'll put the link in. There's tons of stories. You can dig in as much as you want. There's a dashboard. You can look country by country. What's the main impacts? But for Kima, she was using her saving group money to support her family, to support her parents, to make sure that her younger siblings aren't dropping out of school as she herself had to do. And she and her VSLA group mobilized their own money to make sure that kids in the community weren't dropping out. And we see this over and over again with VSLA members. It's not just about how do you use this money that you and your 20 friends are saving together. It's how do you support your broader community, whether they're in that VSLA or not. And it really reflects like how powerful women are as first responders, even though they are the most severely impacted. Next slide. So they do show up even with the limited means they have. And at an individual level, 53% of the women we have polled say we're trying to make ends meet by getting another job. Either they travel elsewhere cross border, but they're stressed. And they're starting small businesses together and separately. They work hard, they work more hours. They're often undervalued within the household and in their community. But 43% of them are also saying we're using our savings to make ends meet at home, right? The intent of a VSLA is for you to use those savings to generate an income. But we have seen over and over again in crises that women in VSLAs use those savings just to make it. And that's a great use of it. So the story you see in front of you is from Aminata in Mali. She herself is a displaced person, right? She's fled from conflict, but she met a village agent in the place where she was displaced, and she learned about a VSLA, and she joined a VSLA, and then they joined forces with 4 other VSLAs. And this is one of the things we see over and over again. VSLA members are the best believers. They're the best proselytizers for VSLAs, and they go form VSLAs. They believe in the power of their group. They want to share that knowledge with others. And so Aminata is a VSLA leader herself, and she cascaded these trainings to other IDPs, displaced people in her area who are affected by conflict. And she's mobilized 120 women into VSLA. She's not getting paid for this. Like, she just did this because she believes this is the best thing she can do for her community. And so she learned some skills from CARE about, some income generating skills, and she's cascaded that to her community, to the people that she's around. She's learned how to make soap. She's trained other people in how to do that. And she's now, 80% of her VSLA members are managing to meet their basic needs in crisis. This is the power of a VSLA, but this is also the power of a woman who is just taking taking matters into her own hands. And this, when I started talking, I was like, yeah, the thing that floored me the most is seeing what women themselves are doing, how they're responding, because often we think of them as passive aid recipients. They are not. They are the first responders. They're there meeting the need of their family and their community. Okay, I'll go a little bit faster. So how are they taking action? Next slide, please. Yeah. So when you look at the leadership of women beyond the story of the numbers, we see 37% said they're volunteering their skills at community level, just like Aminata. They share health information, they share information on agriculture, weather, social issues. So if we are reaching them through VSLAs, and VSLAs are actually a really great platform for not just, savings and financial behavior, but if you're meeting once a week, we also provide information on health, on agriculture, on climate adaptive practices. And women are taking that information, that knowledge, and sharing it with people who aren't in the groups. And they told us food, agriculture, income generating activities, infrastructure, these are the things that they need an organization like CARE to help them with. So they're not saying, give us money or give us aid. They're sophisticated in their understanding of what's happening in the aid landscape. And they're saying, if you're listening to us, help us work on the things we're already working on. And for savings groups, one of the things we're seeing is that they're using their social fund. So there's, their general pool of savings, and then they put into a social fund every week. It's for emergencies. And they're often using that to support, people in distress in the communities or for other things that the community may need. And they've seen them repurposing it for members who are, not able to afford basic food items. And they're supporting community activities. Even at a small scale, these things are really the first response, like when a drought hits. And there's a story, I think actually in the next slide, I want to share with you. So pictures tell everything. So I talked about what are women doing, right? So on the top right, you see Marie from Burundi, who's a VSLA leader. And one of the things they did in their VSLA is to use their own money, mobilize communities, and manage to rebuild a bridge that was damaged. And it was affecting mobility for the entire community, not just the VSLA members, because it prevented access to the market. So they made sure that rebuilding that with their own money helped the entire community, get access to the market. And they also bought a water pump to help farming in their whole community. Again, this isn't just about like, what can I do for myself? It's what can I do for the entire community? We see that all the time. At the bottom, Hedel from Vietnam, she got training from CARE on pig farming. And she directly supported 14 households with weekly technical guidance. Again, we didn't ask her to do this. She's just doing this because she sees the need. She's filling a gap. She provides animal health information, sometimes financial help. And she said one of her key takeaways is that, in the past, like everyone, her coping mechanism when a crisis hit was sell the asset, sell the pig, right? But now, because of the support of her group, she gives pigs to other community members, helps them, also become pig farmers. And, her proudest moment is that she sees her VSLA members supporting each other, and their confidence and capacities and leadership are growing together. Oh, next slide, please. But with all of these actions, they're really inspiring. I'm constantly inspired by our VSLA members. But they have to make tough decisions, and they are resorting to negative coping mechanisms. And more than half of the women we've talked to said they reduced food intake because of the crisis. And we heard this in Ethiopia, Burundi, Niger, Mali. Most of them prioritize feeding their families. So they're always the last ones to eat. Some say they have to borrow outside of their VSLA to make ends meet. 20% have said they sold some form of productive asset, which then diminishes their future income generating capacities. Short-term and long-term, they have economic and health impacts, but support is limited. And they're observing that that support is on the decline. They're sophisticated. They know what's up. And we see this particularly in Syria and Mali, but across all the results, we've seen 82% saying they are seeing that declining support for farming, financial services, livelihoods, employment. And 60% reported that they see a decline in health services and in humanitarian assistance. So for most, the crises are intensifying while the aid support is declining. And they are increasing and leading the response, and they'll continue to do so, but they are unable to meet their needs. And we really are in a huge crisis, meeting a moment that we have not seen before. Next slide, please. So, and women's call for action has been clear, not just this year and not just in 2025, but across all the data. They're asking for more financial services, investment opportunities. They're asking to improve their income and business and their farming. They're not asking for us to give them money. They are saying, this is what we need. Support us to do what we do. They want to focus on better food and nutrition access, including their ability to grow it and adapt it in climate change during climate crises, and particularly where basic services are hugely affected: access to health care, water, protection, education. Essential services are a priority, but the majority of the time, we see livelihoods and incomes are the top things. Always in the top two. And in some countries, we see access to financial services as the #1 priority, followed by livelihood support. But women aren't asking for handouts across countries. They're asking for those opportunities and investments and services to help them recover and adapt. And they want to do it themselves. And they are saying, CARE, if you're going to do something, help us do what we do better. Next slide. So I wanted to share with you Marie's story. I showed it earlier from Burundi. In the past few years in Burundi have been really difficult because of floods, food insecurity, safety concerns. But she's leading her VSLA and she's helping rebuild her community. But alongside that effort, they're trying to build networks of savings groups in their communities because together, if they unite, they're much stronger and they can access larger loans and financial opportunities. And the ambition is to be able to develop their entire community. It's not just about me, Marie, as an individual. It's about what can I do to help this community thrive? And we see that everywhere. This is why I'm such a believer in VSLAs. You know, they own this. They take this as a launch pad for their own leadership, and they are just constantly blowing the doors off of what we think women can do. I'll stop here. I wanted to give you guys lots of time for questions. We got about 10. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. And what questions can I answer?
Thank you so much, Vidya, for coming and sharing this amazing work and for doing it. Like, people who are on this call with you won't know that, you are in these countries on the ground, partaking and designing and delivering like the listening activities to try and understand rather than you telling women what we think they need, you actually listening on the ground. And so thank you for doing that. I know that you pay a price for that with your family and your own self. So thank you for doing that work. And thank you for coming here to share it. And if there are people that want to, I'll stop sharing my screen, that are in the room and want to ask a question, all you have to do is either raise your Zoom hand or you can just turn your microphone on. It's a small enough group that's fine. And if you don't want to turn your microphone on to ask a question, you can put your questions in the chat. And one of the questions that I'll amplify from the chat while the people in the room can decide if they want to ask questions is, can you tell us a little bit about the kind of the technical background of how you go about collecting the data from all of these, like, especially when you said, when we get to women that live in rural really remote parts of the country. Part of the reason I think they get skipped a lot is technical. So how are you overcoming that?
Yeah. So what we started doing during COVID is collecting phone numbers of people, right? But I
Okay.
mean, we had phone numbers of
Of
our
course.
trainers, and but women
Right.
often do have a phone, like a feature phone,
Mm-hmm.
and we've got thousands of numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and we ask them first, like, will you participate, right? Because we pay for data costs, we reimburse them.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't just about like, give us the data. We will pay you for your time. But we've collected thousands of numbers. But in the most remote areas, we have a community-based trainer who is from that community. So it's worth mentioning that 90% of our staff are not, they're not like me. They work in those communities and they're from those communities and they
Right.
speak those languages. So even when we can't reach them digitally, we have that community-based trainer go and sit
Mhm.
with communities and collect the data.
Right.
Um, Logistically, how it feeds back to us is we got some funding from Microsoft a couple of years ago to build a dashboard and a backend system that we feed that data back into. So across countries, this is why we keep the questions limited to the three, so that it comes back a little
I
cleaner
see.
and we can, assess it. And then we do that twice a year. And I don't know all the technical geeky stuff, but we
Sure.
have we have the ability to look at that data across countries and it gives us insights. And then those insights are kind of a jumping off point, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
not like, here, thanks for the data. We need to go back and share that with the community. So that same CBT goes back and we work directly with that community-based trainer in the country and say, okay, right, we heard these things. Please go ask XYZ. And we sit with the groups and ask them that. So the qualitative, that is the part that takes a lot of time, but that is where we get all the nuance.
Right.
And
Of
there is
course.
a coordinator, and there's it's not a huge team. There's only like two or three of us and an intern that
Yeah.
digests all of this because this isn't,
Wow.
I, I'll just share this with you guys. This is not well funded. Like I literally, even at CARE, like this is one of those things that you would hope is just institutionalized. I've been trying for 5 years and I